Welcome everyone again. So in this session, Akshay and I are going to go through how biomarket is evolving, what are some of the trends that are driving their behavior, and how are the industry around us is being reshaped by the effect of COVID. Akshay, why don't you get started?
Thanks, Anupam. Um, so I think, first of all, I think good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thanks for joining in. Like Kevin mentioned, we're coming off of the Empowering Beyond Summit. So there's some great conversations around technology, around different industries and how different industries are um, utilizing the technology and how they've come out of this COVID crisis, many of them much stronger. So I think so. Obviously, great conversations in the summit just held early in the June. So I think what we wanted to start with, like Anupam said, just to give you a perspective of what we are seeing from a research and advisory perspective in the buyer market. Of course, last year was a crazy year for everybody. We all, went through um, a lot of change, to say the least, on personal front, professional front, and so on. And of course, I think we all have come out a lot more stronger. Of course, the recovery is still ongoing. In some sectors, it has recovered fairly well and fairly quickly. But wanted to start with this chart really around how the entire vaccine program across the globe really has accelerated in the last, I would say, 6 to 7 months. Of course, better part of second half of last year was around really development of vaccines and the trials and whatnot. But uh, pretty much countries, governments across the globe have really doubled down on this. They've been ramping up the vaccine effort so that people can feel a lot more safer. They're more protected against COVID-19 and so on. So of course, since the start of the year, we're almost now up to about 35 million doses administered every day across the globe, and cumulatively, as recent as a couple of days back, we've administered over $2.5 billion doses, globally, and that, Annalisa, if you move to the next slide, that really has propelled the entire recovery, right? And of course, as we saw, and especially in the clients that we serve, some sectors really clearly, recovered very quickly. And in fact went to pre-COVID levels very quickly. Some of them even surpassed the pre-COVID levels. And we are seeing it, and we believe that the recovery is going to be much faster. And I think the most interesting thing from our vantage point is that much of this recovery, we expect it to be more technology led, right? Because again, right from whether it was vaccines, technology played a big role in terms of its deployment. Technology played a big role, and businesses have realized that the use of technology, use of digital channels is going to be key to their survival, and also to ensure that how they serve customers going forward. And that also in big part really is because an entirely new consumer behavior has emerged over the last 12 to 18 months. So if you move to the next slide, Annalisa. So again, some examples where we've seen consumer behavior getting fundamentally changed, right? We've all gone through it in our personal lives, professional lives. We obviously were significantly reliant on online shopping, right? All of our purchases moved pretty much online, and that's reflected in the numbers that we're seeing and tracking. The e-commerce share increased 3 percentage points. So the global share in e-commerce is almost up to 17% in 2020, as opposed to 14% in 2019. So that's added several trillion dollars that has moved from offline or physical retail to e-commerce, right? A great example of that is somebody like Kroger. They saw significant improvement or increase in the e-commerce sales. Of course, they'd been investing in digital channel for a long time, and that held them in good stead, because they were able to increase their online or digital sales to almost $11 billion plus, right? They kind of on a weekly basis, they deliver about $11 billion personalized messages through their digital channel, kind of reaching to that scale. So there are several examples like that. We moved, obviously most of our entertainment to online, the Netflix, the Hulus, the Discovery Pluses of the world. We were obviously not able to travel or take vacations, but of course, Zoom calls and WhatsApp calls and so on with families and friends, they continued and we innovated, right? And I think the point really on all of these is how this fundamentally changes the buyer behavior, the consumer behavior, leading to all of these organizations focusing more and more on digital channels, investing more in technology, scaling more in technology. We're seeing media and entertainment clients doubling, tripling their investment in public cloud. So because they have to ramp up to the scale and volume that they're seeing. So this is really, I think, fundamental why I say that the recovery is going to be very tech led, and this is going to be a pivotal point in terms of journey of the enterprises. What we also saw on the client side or the buyer side is how, in response to COVID-19 and the changing buyer behavior, consumer behavior, they were really compelled to pivot to different and newer business and operating models. And some of these findings are coming from our collaboration with NASSCOM, where we conducted a digital enterprises survey, polling around about 270 plus different global enterprises across the different geographies, whether it's United States or Europe and APAC and Middle East. Some very interesting results from these. Almost 60% of enterprises will have adopted or explored new delivery models, right? And again, all to enhance that customer experience, whether it's large retailers like Walmart or restaurants or fast food chains. Again, as demand shifted, they were very quickly able to pivot to that. And again, because some of these were early adopters of technology and had put those investments in place. Several enterprises were forced to explore new business models. This was especially true for folks in travel, hospitality, where they were exploring newer areas because the core business itself was significantly impacted. So folks like United, Marriott, they innovated with different concepts so that they could tap into different business models or expand into newer revenue opportunities, right? And of course, amidst all this, people also continue to do expansion in different geographies, driven by again COVID and also other macroeconomic trends. So in a nutshell, again, a lot of resilience obviously was shown by these organizations across the clients, across different industries, but then also agility in terms of pivoting to or adapting to the changing consumer behavior or consumer demand. And how did they really do that? They if you move to the next slide, Annalisa, they really looked. I think there are 4 or 5 key things that we've seen based on the research that we've done carried out over the last 12 months or so. I think there's clearly a trend emerging around the large deals. I think Anupam is going to talk about that a little bit. I think as organizations are doubling down on their digital agenda, looking at overall cost takeout, reducing the expenses, they are looking to consolidate the spend and are more open to the large transformation deals. Shift, I think, towards the doing more OpEx as opposed to capital spending, I think has continued, and it will be expected to further accelerate and continue. So I think more and more shift towards OpEx spending around public cloud will continue to increase. The other interesting thing that came out through the NASSCOM Avasant study was desire from the enterprises to actually look at shorter or faster implementation of the projects that they're doing. And again, time was of essence during the COVID recovery, second half of last year. They've been significantly focused on ensuring that their partners can deliver projects in a much faster timeline. So getting from kind of idea to execution, that those timelines are definitely shrinking. Obviously the other mega trend really is that outsourcing will continue to expand. That of course we all saw, and I think Kevin has also alluded to it. the location is really immaterial, right? So location has become not a deciding factor. So enterprises are even more open now to how the work is getting delivered from where it is getting delivered. So we expect that that will continue, and of course, with all the investments in digital happening, enterprises don't have access to all the digital skills, and that's where they are going to rely on partners, the service provider ecosystem, to do more and more of that transformation. And last, again, I think the areas where we're seeing a lot more investments is really around cybersecurity, cloud, of course, application development, business platforms, things like that. We continue to see more outsourcing happening going forward. And again, the access to skills is going to be critical. We know that several service providers, actually almost all service providers, are investing heavily in the talent area, upskilling their resources, cross-selling their resources. So that again, I think is a good overall trend in terms of supporting these enterprises in their digital transformation agenda. Anupam?
Thanks, Akshay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So continuing on from where you left off. So we are all aware that 2020, 2021 was the year of the pivot. The impact of COVID, the pandemic, which ravaged across the world, was felt universally. However, its impact was not uniform. On one hand, of course, we saw a lot of tragedy and suffering and economic decline. On the other hand, if you look at just the global market indicators, the global market cap gained over $16 trillion between February of 2020 and April of this year. That is amazing. So COVID essentially killed businesses that were unprepared to be digital, while it propelled other businesses who were digitally mature and were able to survive and thrive through that whole pandemic. We saw several trends that got accelerated due to this. We saw the rapid shift to the digital workplace, reimagining of the future of work through automation, AI. Digital and global supply chains got disrupted, and we saw rapid digitalization, disintermediation in the supply chains to ensure that all the goods and other products kept moving. The big difference, of course, was in the way we engage with various companies, retail and healthcare and other sectors. We rapidly moved to frictionless, touchless consumer engagement. And finally, businesses had to also accelerate their shift to a business model that is aligned with today's digital economy. Next slide, please. So we had done some survey, and Kevin alluded to this slide earlier in his talk. We'd done a survey pre-COVID, midway through COVID, and then recently, earlier this year. And what we realized is, while there was an impact between March and June of 2020 in terms of enterprise spend on IT and sourcing and digital, in the second half of the year, that investments accelerated at a very, very rapid clip. Enterprises realized they have to spend a lot more on digital technologies to prepare the organization to work in a world where your employees, your customers, your vendors, partners may be interacting virtually for quite a while. So in fact, we are now on a higher trajectory in terms of spend in digital transformation initiatives, and that's going to be borne by some of the data that Frank and Dave will be sharing in the next session. Next slide. As you can see in this slide also, investments across different industries in digital have been really accelerating, especially if you look at retail and healthcare. And if you look at the last bar, which is the ones that say will decrease, it's only 4% of those companies. Most of them have rapidly increased their spend on digital. Next slide. We can skip this actually, as we're running short. Next slide, yes. So what's happening now is, again, a rise of transformational sourcing. the access of services is shifting, becoming more platform-driven and partnership-enabled. We're going to have a session later today with Joe and Carlos who are going to talk about how Avasant is enabling its clients to go through this transformational sourcing, where really the focus is on modernizing technology, transforming the business, moving to a digital enterprise, focus more on value creation than costs, and also looking at a very partnership, co-invested type of model. Next slide. So to summarize our session, the global services industry, which was the pillar through the entire COVID crisis and supported the critical business functions of its clients, is now poised for a significant growth period. We have to get ready for this ride as large deals and mega deals are coming back in droves. And this is happening because companies are not only trying to recalibrate their cost structures, but they're also using their savings to invest in the new digital transformation initiatives. The key deal levers, which is multi-tower, vendor consolidation, digital infrastructure, and transformation, are going to be paramount. And service providers, to succeed and thrive in this new age, have to learn to combine and bundle all of this into cohesive solutions that clients are looking for. And Avasant, of course, wants to be a partner in that journey. Thank you, and back to you, Andriana.